Howdy readers, I'm Jason. This is Chapter and Verse, and this is an original tag video. So this video is called the Deathbed Tag. It is being co-created by myself and Lukash from Totally Pretentious, and it was inspired by an old video on Neil Griffith's channel. Neil's not making videos anymore on Booktube, which makes me very sad, actually. But he has this video that he did, I want to say a couple of years ago. And the video was just called My Deathbed, and I'll link to it down below. And in that video, he talks about the art that he hopes to engage with at the end of his life, before his time is up. And it's just really thoughtful. It's not morose, it's not macabre in any way. It's a video I've watched many times, and I have long thought about turning it into an original tag because I like this idea of all of us kind of wondering what art, what books, what music, what films, what paintings, etc., what art is not only most important to us, or not even most important to us, but what art do we suspect will somehow speak most deeply to us at the time of our death, if we know it's coming, right? So, if we're in hospice care or what have you, and we know that we've got 2 weeks left or a month left or something like this, and we're still lucid, we're still conscious, we're not beyond art, and art isn't beyond us yet. What novels and poems and songs would we hope to encounter and to appreciate and to think about one last time in this life? So that's the idea for this tag. And anyway, so one day I sent Lukash a Voxer message telling him about my idea, and he sent me a message back and said that he had been thinking about that idea as well, creating a tag inspired by the Neil Griffith video. So we thought, well, let's do it together. So basically, right, I'm introducing the questions with this. If you know your death is imminent, weeks or months away, perhaps you're in the late stages of a terminal illness, or perhaps you're merely in the final months of a very old age, what are the works of art that you most hope to encounter one last time? And question one is, what music do you hope to listen to in the final days or weeks of your life? And I have a few things here. So the first thing I wanted to share, these are the Brandenburg Concertos by Johann Sebastian Bach. And I absolutely just love these. These might be my favorite works of classical music. But I wouldn't want to listen to the specific concertos that have the harpsichord in them, because harpsichord really terrifies me, and I don't want to be terrified any more than I already will be in the end of my life. There's just something about the harpsichord. It makes me think of horror films. It makes me think of Transylvanian castles. I don't know why that is, but it is. So, but this is music that just, again, apart from the harpsichord pieces, it just leaves me feeling peaceful, I suppose. It leaves me feeling not happy so much, not joyful so much, but just content and calm and collected. And yeah, I mean, those are all things I hope to feel at the end of my life. The next piece of music that I have chosen, it's kind of orchestral electronic music. That sounds strange, I know, but listen to it, trust me, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But this is Orpheus by Johann Johansson, a composer who died just, I think last year, actually. And this music just feels so, like almost like a dirge, I suppose. Again, not in any kind of, morose or maudlin way. The music just feels, it feels like it would be appropriate for kind of playing you into, what might be your last sleep or something like this. Particularly the first track on the album, which is called Flight from the City. And I will leave a link to that song in the description box below, so you can maybe see what I mean by that. But it's just a beautiful album. And then a couple other things here. Let's see. So Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. This is the work of classical music that I have seen performed live most. I think I've seen it done 3 times. I mean, the whole thing is, 63 minutes long or something? This is the only work of classical music that I have listened to so many times in my life that I have it memorized in the same way that one memorizes an album or, 2 or 3 favorite songs. I mean, I could get on the interstate and put this in and essentially kind of conduct it in my seat behind the wheel. I know the music so well. Not literally conduct it. I'm not a conductor. I'm not making claims to be a conductor. But I'm just so familiar with it. And the 4th movement of it, I know it's cliche to say this, but it really does fill me with joy, which it's supposed to do, right? It is Ode to Joy. It is aptly named. I will try to remember to link in the description box below a flash mob of a performance of a truncated performance of Ode to Joy. I'm just so moved by that little video. Back when I was teaching, I shared it with students. Occasionally, at the end of a class, I just wanted to leave the students with something that was really unexpected and really beautiful. And I remember one day I played that for my students, and it almost brought me to tears in front of a classroom of college kids. So, anyway, Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. And then the last piece of music is actually a song, and it's a song on Loreena McKennitt's album, The Visit. And it's the last song on this album, which she just calls Cymbeline. But what it is a poem from Shakespeare's play Cymbeline that she has set to music. And there's just something about it that feels final and melancholy and kind of filled with longing. It sounds like nighttime feels, if that makes any sense, which it probably doesn't. But anyway, yeah, if you haven't heard Loreena McKennitt's version of the poem from Cymbeline, you must seek it out. So that was number 1. Number 2, what novel or novels do you hope to read in the final days or weeks of your life? And my one answer for that, the novel that I want to be reading in the final days of my life, or have read to me if I'm not able to read on my own anymore, is Charles Dickens's David Copperfield. Now the weird thing about this is Bleak House is my favorite book of all time. So this is not even my favorite Dickens novel. There are probably 3 other Dickens novels that I would rate, maybe 4, that I would rate higher than this. But there's just something about this book that utterly convinces me that this is the last novel that I want to spend time with on this earth. I don't know if it's to do with the main character, trying to determine to what extent his life is his own, his story is his own, the arc of his life, how much of it has been determined by him. I don't know if it's to do with the fate of the character Steerforth, but there's just something about this book that makes me, I just want this to keep me company at the end, which is also kind of curious too, I suppose, because it's a coming of age novel. And so for someone to want this book to be at their bedside table at the end of their life is unusual, I suppose. But these are my answers and not anybody else's. So, David Copperfield. Number 3, what film or films do you hope to watch? So the big one, and this is probably going to come as no surprise to most of you, is Terrence Malick's The Tree of Life. The more times I see this, the more I think about this film, the higher it climbs on my list of favorite movies of all time. I would put it in the top 3 or 4 now. There's just something about it that feels so about reconciling. And obviously, I mean, that's something that I hope to very much so have on my mind and in my actions when my time comes. Reconciling and forgiving oneself, forgiving others. These are powerful things. These are important things. And for Terrence Malick, no less than myself, they very much have their roots in a profession of faith in religion. And if you haven't seen The Tree of Life yet, I made a video on it earlier this year as part of my Mortality Project, which was another reason I wanted to create this Deathbed Tag in December as a way of kind of rounding out my year of reading about and watching films about death. So, and then the one other film I chose is a very unusual choice, but I chose this just because of how gleeful it makes me feel. Probably more than any other movie I've ever seen. Lukas Moodysson's Together, the Swedish title is Tillsammans. It just makes me feel lighter than air. Like it's just a wonderful, wonderful movie about love and about forgiveness and about second chances, and it uses the music of ABBA to glorious effect. I'm a huge ABBA fan. I know that's unfashionable to say, but I remember when I saw this in the theater in Cheyenne. It was playing as part of this art film series, and I felt so good during the final moments. I literally I felt like I was about to burst out of my skin. I literally did burst into applause at the end of the movie, as did most of the people in the screening room. And that's the only time in my life that's ever happened in a way that was unplanned, unprovoked, not interested in flattery, right? The director of the film wasn't there in the screening room with us or anything like this. The movie just made us all feel really fucking good. And I'd like to see that one more time at the end. Let's see. Number 4, what static visual works of art do you hope to consider one last time? I couldn't really think of anything, which is odd because there are paintings and sculptures that I really love. But again, this isn't, for me anyway, this isn't so much about art that I really love. It's about art that somehow feels of a piece of what I anticipate my frame of mind will be like at that time. The things that will be important to me at that time, what's likely going to be occupying my thoughts at that time. So it's about finding works of art that chime with what I anticipate all of those things will be, if that makes any sense. So I didn't choose a work of visual art. Number 5, what poem or poems do you hope to read? And the first one is the title poem in Christian Wyman's book, Every Riven Thing. It's something else, that poem. It's incredibly complicated. I've read it, I don't even know how many times, and I feel like I'm always just at the tip of really understanding what's going on in it. But it feels so intimate, so kind of knitted up with my idea of what God is and who God is, that that's a poem that I don't know. I suspect would be of real comfort to me at the end. And then the other poem that I chose is Fog Argument by Mark Doty from his collection Atlantis. Yeah, so with the Christian Wyman and the Mark Doty poems, I thought about reading them on camera for you guys, but I think what I'm going to do instead is I will try to find them online somewhere, and I'll try to provide links in the box below to those poems so that it's not fleeting. I think it would be kind of cool to hear them in the voice of the person for whom they're really important and significant as far as these questions are concerned. But I also kind of like the idea of you spending time with the poems yourself and reading them in your own voice and rereading them and reading the verses out of order, all the things that we do with poetry to help us apprehend it. So I'll see if I can find these 2 poems online somewhere, and I'll link to them for you guys. Question 6, is there a religious text or section of a religious text that you hope to read? And for me, the answer is the Gospel of John, and it would be in the King James Version. Now, I rarely read the King James Version in day-to-day. I can't even remember actually the last time I picked up the King James Version of the Bible. And I usually read the a Catholic translation, which is the NAB, or the NIV translation, just for my own study and for my own kind of consolation. But there's something so kind of cosmically beautiful about the Gospel of John that I just feel like the language of the King James Version, it's so elevated. It's elevated in such a way that it meets what the Gospel of John is doing. And I find that extraordinary. And that might be actually part of the reason that I don't read that translation of the Gospel of John more often, is that it feels almost like it's too much to handle. It feels like a kind of like a burst of starlight or something, and that's intense. But at the end of one's life, one's probably better equipped, I suppose, to handle certain kinds of intensity than one is, when they get home from work and thinking about what to cook for dinner. So it'd be the Gospel of John. And then the last question, is there another work of art, drama, dance, nonfiction, etc., unrepresented in the previous categories that you hope to encounter one last time? And for me, so I was thinking about things that I have encountered, things I've read or seen or what have you. For instance, Angels in America. Like, I would love to see that whole play done live. I've only ever seen the first part of it, Millennium Approaches, done on stage. But I'd love to see the whole thing. But more than that, I think I would like to see something or encounter a work of art that I've never encountered before, but that I've always wanted to encounter. And this may sound strange, but and a very kind of Lukashian answer in some way, but there's an opera of Wallace Stegner's novel Angle of Repose. And while I'm not an opera aficionado by any stretch of the imagination, I don't even really understand it very much as an art form. It still feels kind of alien to me, although Lukács has helped a lot with that. I love Stegner's book so much, and I would just be really curious to see what it would be like on stage as an opera. So I think that'll be my answer for that question, the opera of Angle of Repose. So that's it. That's the Deathbed Tag. Before I leave you guys with this, I am going to tag a few people. Mark Richardson at Richardson Reads, Mark Nash, Brian at Bookish, Tilly at Tilly's Shelf, and I think her name is Charlotte. It's a new channel I've been following. Her channel is called Tired Mama Tries to Read. And I will leave links to all of those channels below. These are all booktubers who seem very thoughtful and very serious to me in the ways that I like the people whose channels I like to follow, people that I really appreciate spending time with in life. All of these people seem thoughtful and serious in the ways that I want the people in my life to be thoughtful and serious. So I would be really curious to hear their answers to these questions. So that's it. I hope this didn't freak anybody out too much. Check out Lukács's video as well. As soon as it's up, I will leave a link to his video in the description box too. And yeah, I will talk to you guys again very soon. Adios.